P.D. Ryan Unleashed is brought to you by Scott Diamond, your State Farm Insurance Agent, Pizza Villa in DeKalb, Elder Care Services of DeKalb County, The Junction Eating Place in DeKalb, and my insurance guy, Mike DeVito in Sycamore. And welcome to T.D. Ryan Unleashed News Podcast number 5. Honored and have privilege with us have former Second Ward alderman with us from the city of DeKalb, Bill Finicune. Bill, how you doing, my friend?
I'm doing great today, TD. Thanks for having me here.
Proudly wearing his Bikey with Beansy t-shirt. We're going to talk about that in a minute. And of course, Dan Lynch, again, the stalwart of the program. Dan, how you doing?
I am well, thanks.
Did you know you were the stalwart of the program? I don't know if you knew that.
Does that mean top billing?
I think that's something like that. I know. I'll look up into that. But we're going to do it just like the morning show. We're going to do some news. We got some sports. We got some community calendar, obituaries and birthdays, and of course the news quiz as well. And Dan's going to start us out with some news. And then, Bill, we encourage you to comment along the way, whatever you feel like chiming in.
All right, thanks.
All right. What do you got for us, Dan?
A Sycamore man is facing drugs and weapons charges after a traffic stop in rural DeKalb County, so at Salmonock and Kesslinger, southeast of DeKalb. According to the DeKalb County Sheriff's Office, Stephen Hernandez was pulled over at around 11:30 Monday night. Upon search of his vehicle, deputies found over 40 Adderall pills, methamphetamine, cocaine, brass knuckles with a built-in switchblade. And an
I'm sorry. It's something to just... I'm sorry, go ahead. I'll cut that out later. Go ahead, please. Right where you left off.
Brass knuckles with a built-in switchblade and an additional switchblade. The 43-year-old Hernandez was released with a court date. That's that story.
Yeah, back when you and I were doing the news on the radio, we've heard stories all the time about these guys that are out or on probation, and inevitably they have a weapon in the vehicle. A lot of times a gun underneath the seat, and in this case, brass knuckles, I know, and
yeah,
you can't feel bad for them. If they know, Bill, they know they're in trouble. Let's walk the straight line, at least for a while.
You would think so. You see so many things, particularly in the city of Chicago, where somebody who's out on probation or is out on bail and for a serious crime, and then they commit another serious crime.
Yeah, we had State Representative Jeff Kiker here last week, and he pointed out that there's about 135 FOIA violations in the city of Chicago. In other words, 130,000 people that shouldn't have guns that do have guns, and they don't have, I guess, the manpower or the wherewithal to go after these guys.
Right. It's supposed to be in Chicago, purview of the Cook County Sheriff, and he is not able to do it under staffing.
All right, and again, get back to staffing there. All right, what else you got there, Dan?
DeKalb City Council, I was going to talk about this last week, but I had a lot of other material. DeKalb City Council voted to ban vape vending machines and the sale of unregulated hemp-derived THC and, I say, kratom products.
Yeah, I didn't even know what that was, so yeah. And I have the definition of kratom is... where do I have that somewhere?
It's a stimulant.
A stimulant, yeah.
And they're doing this to reduce access for minors. Unlike cannabis sold at licensed dispensaries, these products are not tested for safety and often come in packaging that resembles candy or snacks, raising concerns about accidental use by youngsters. The new rules also target the lack of marketing regulations and the ease of purchase through vending machines, which city officials say could mislead users about how risky it is.
Yeah. Now, kratom, however you say that, kratom is an herbal substance that produces both stimulant and opioid effects and could have things like bad materials in there as well. There are no vape vending machines existing in DeKalb. It's not clear how many local stores sell kratom or not, but this is really scary. It reminds me of Joe Camel with the cigarettes. Remember when they were, obviously marketing right to children, and this is the case here. So this is a case like a Mini Mart or a 7-Eleven would have a display of this, and in theory should be carding the kids when they buy it, right? Is that how it works?
If
Yeah.
Mom and if your parents are off, you've got so it's like a pop machine.
All right. So do we know where we stand with this right now? Now, Bill, what are your thoughts on this? Because
it's obviously a lot like the old cigarette vending machines where anybody could have access without an ID. But even in the stores, it's like going into a liquor store. You should get carded, but you don't always. You see the news stories all the times about this store or that store getting busted.
Oh, sure.
So this precludes a lot of that.
I remember as a kid, we'd find a vending machine, some obscure place that was selling cigarettes. Remember, they used to get matchbooks with it, and we get to give the matchbooks too. And my brothers would go and buy cigarettes illegally. Barb Larson, alderman, who will be our guest next week here on the podcast, said, quote, "I don't disregard that there's any benefits or there aren't any effects, but if there are, then it's going to be regulated." So obviously this has to be regulated. And we have 2 dispensaries now in DeKalb already, right? So
correct. One on the west side, one not too far from where we're located right now.
okay, so very good. Dan, have you seen this stuff in the stores? I've not. I don't go into many 7-Elevens or mini marts. Have you ever seen a display of this stuff?
I have not, although I'm kind of overwhelmed by these vape products.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what I'm looking at anymore. Everything, it's very shiny and
Yes,
frilly.
a lot of bright colors.
Sadly, when I go on a walk, I find these things in the ditch.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So, not a good thing. All right, so we'll follow up on that story. That's where it stands right now. I see here the Sycamore Middle and High Schools are getting new security cameras in time for the fall, and unfortunately, that's just the way of the land now, right?
It is. I'm surprised I know it's an update or replacement. I'm surprised they're not doing it in the elementary schools too.
And Dan, I imagine that's just a matter of time, I would think, because you don't need approval, right, to put these cameras up in the schools,
Right.
as far as you know.
No. I think you're going to see this a lot. I remember my cousin in the UK told me 15 years ago, he said, "You can't go on, you're always on camera in the UK."
Right.
And I naively said, "Oh, that'll never happen here."
But we hear these horror stories about people fighting in the bathrooms at DeKalb High School and things like that. Now, obviously, we won't see that on camera, but when we hear about violence with young people, it's really important to have those cameras.
Oh, it is. And, the high school that I coach at, there are cameras all over the building over there. And like Dan said, there's hardly a place in the building you can be without being seen on camera.
And I imagine mentally you're aware of that fact, and you would think that's going to keep you from maybe doing something stupid.
Well, I think it will for more mature people, but, high school kids are high school kids, and they don't always think about those kind of things.
Well, we know they'll go out and do something illegal, and they'll videotape it for themselves. And then, of course.
Yeah, you see that on TikTok and YouTube and everything all the time.
Yeah. And some of the fights, and especially, not especially, but the girls are just ruthless. When I see these teenage girls get into a fight, they inevitably grab each other's hair and just refuse to let go and just start pounding on each other. I mean, I don't want to say men have some kind of rules or some kind of ethics when it comes to brawling, but when the girls go at it, it's frightening.
You talking about the WNBA?
No,
No, it's just against Caitlin Clark.
Yeah, that's a whole. We'll cover that in sports. All right, what else you got there, Dan?
A Sycamore man is accused of trying to strangle an elderly person. The DeKalb County Sheriff's Office reports on the night of July 1st, just before 7, deputies responded to the 21,000 block of Salmonock Road in rural Sycamore. The office reports 48-year-old Michael Cohen tried to strangle a person north of the age of 60 with a cord. Cohen is now charged with aggravated domestic battery, and 2 counts of domestic battery. He's being held at the DeKalb County Jail.
Wow, that is some frightening stuff there, especially with the choking. We talked to our friends from Safe Passage and the Domestic Violence Agency here in DeKalb, and choking is such an intimate thing because you're inevitably looking right at the person when you're doing. In this case, with the cord, also you'd just can't imagine doing that. So here's a case now with the Safety Act.
Right.
He will not be given bond, or do we know if he's bonded out or not?
Has not. No.
Has not. Okay.
No, the judge ruled to be incarcerated.
All right, yeah. Now, Bill, we know it's a whole other world now with the Safety Act. And then here's a case here where a domestic violence case, because so often we hear that, and you release these guys again, the women are still back where they were before, and this guy is out again.
Well, it is. And, the protective orders are just a piece of paper.
Right.
And it doesn't stop anybody. You read about that all the time. There's a case about a year ago in the city of Chicago where a guy was let out of prison and went back and attacked his ex-girlfriend the next night when she still had a protective order, but it didn't stop him.
Yeah.
And it ended up the son tried to defend her and he died.
Oh, my. Wow. Now, we're blessed to have Safe Passage Agency here, and, of course, Bill, they have the land now, right? And I imagine just time to raise the money to start building that new building.
I would hope so. Tara does a great job out there and her whole crew. They do a really good job for seniors. There are so many seniors who are less fortunate than you and I that need that kind of help.
Yeah, very good. All right. Now, again, so this is, this is pending, right? Depending on, he'll probably plea bargain with this, sort of.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's court date forthcoming, but.
Well, once, we talked to the state's attorney years ago on WLBK, and I didn't know anything about plea bargaining, and you hear it all the time, but then you see that, what is it? I think only 10% of cases actually go to trial. Inevitably, they'll take the plea bargain, as we just saw with the guy who killed those people out in South Dakota, I think it was. He just pled guilty and took a plea bargain.
Yeah.
But it keeps our courts from getting all bogged down, right?
Well, it does. And I think even most recently, Dan, maybe you can answer this. Didn't the person who killed the deputy a year ago, didn't he just plea bargain and plead guilty?
I think I just saw that, yeah.
Yeah, Officer Muscle there in the... And what upset a lot of people was he was allowed to go to his nephew or niece's graduation in another state. They allowed him to go and do that. And again, it's the Safety Act, and again, like it or not, that's the way it is. But sadly, that is the case. So let's talk about the city of DeKalb. Of course, now, Bill, you've been around a long time, and I mean that in the nicest way. But DeKalb seems to be on a little surge here. Now, unfortunately, I see Hidden Treasures and more in DeKalb is closing down. That's always tough to have a used furniture store like that.
It's a collectible, antique store, however you want to refer to it, but it's a very tough business. And if you look around DeKalb, there's multiple places like that. And,
yeah.
It's amazing the city has been able to support as many as they have, but it has been kind of a revolving door here over the last 5 years with those kind of businesses.
Dan, now is Maria the old furniture person? Is that the collectibles and things like that?
Yeah, because we kind of like the way things were made back then.
The old stuff, yeah.
They used a little more steel. The wood was cut.
Right, and ornate, I always love that.
In a different way, yeah.
So we're sorry to see them go, but on the flip side, we have the Sales Jiu-Jitsu grappling gym is coming to DeKalb after 2.5 years in Sycamore. So we're stealing from Sycamore here. How about that?
I noticed that right over here on South 4th Street, they have their signs that they're open now.
Okay.
And, you talk about other things coming in, the Italian steakhouse that's going to come in, the new pizza place that's going to come in, and the old Eduardo spot as long as that's been vacant.
Right.
Those are some really good things to happen on downtown DeKalb.
Becky and I, we had our friends in on Monday, and we wanted to go to the Flame. The Flame was completely full. And then we went to top of La Luna. They were closed. Most restaurants closed on Mondays. But we had many options in downtown DeKalb. Well, we ended up at El Humidor, which was open. And it's great that we have so many great places to eat in DeKalb.
Oh, there is. And it isn't just on Lincoln Highway. You come over here on 4th Street, and there's the Grove. You go a little further, you have Rosita.
All right. We had some technical difficulty, but we think we've worked that out. When we last left our friends, we were talking about Pizza Villa and, of course, all the great restaurant options we have in DeKalb. And Bill, you were telling us a Pizza Villa story that you had.
Right. So John and CJ told us that their previous arcade game supplier wanted them to put in the gaming machines. And that's just not what CJ and John want for their family-orientated business. And so they ended up getting a new supplier for their arcade.
Is that right?
Yeah, and I'm really proud of the fact that they did that. I mean, that really shows their moral upbringing and what have you.
That reminds me of Lehan Drugs, when Lehan Drugs stopped selling cigarettes way before other people stopped selling cigarettes.
Yeah, way early. That was a decision that Tim made in conjunction with the rest of the family. And you know what? They never missed a beat.
No. I was going to say, didn't hurt him in the least there. We're talking to Bill Finucane, former second ward alderman, joining us here on Newscast number 5. What else you got, Dan? You got another local news story?
Yeah, Illinois Department of Employment Security reports unemployment rates fell across all 12 metro areas in May compared to a year ago, with the statewide rate dropping to 4.4. It was 4.8. DeKalb and Lee counties both reported decreases of 0.9 points to 3.9% for DeKalb and 3.5 for Lee County.
Wow.
Ogle County dropped 1 percentage point to 3.7. The lowest metro rate was Bloomington. And Illinois statewide rates remain slightly above the national average of 4.2%.
How about that? Now, of course, we are kind of the exception to the rule, aren't we? You know, Bill, I was just talking to the fire chief, Mike Thomas, and Luke Howelson will be replacing him. And we're talking about how DeKalb is growing and the necessary putting that fourth fire station on the southwest side of DeKalb. And he says there's 98 housing starts over the last 3 years in DeKalb. How about that?
That's pretty good considering where we were only having 1 or 2 a year for a decade. You know, and there's then that many more starts, you know, it's good to see. Plus all the industrial growth we've had in the last 6 years here in town.
And people, and we're talking about that bike path that goes out to Park 88. And a lot of people finding employment out there and able to ride their bike out there.
There is, and you know, I'll put in a plug. That bike path was partially funded by Kishwaukee Kiwanis. We provided the local matching funds.
And Dan, unfortunately, you and I lost our jobs at a similar time, and it was very interesting for me to type in jobs near me or jobs in DeKalb County, and boy, you see what's out there. I don't know if you've seen some of the stuff, but a lot of, Walmart stuff and restocking and stuff along those lines, but some very interesting work as well.
Yeah, I'm a little long in the tooth, but a lot of guys I know in the trades, 3 different people have told me they have trouble finding people.
Really?
Work. Yeah. I mean, this summer, they told me they have trouble finding people. So.
Yeah, at one point they were talking about unemployment numbers, and they said people that choose not to work. I'm like, yeah, wouldn't that be great if we all just had that option to just choose not to work?
You know, but to go along with what Dan just said, I've had some experience. We just had service personnel in ours, and they were talking about, they're so busy because they can't get the staff. Part of it is they're not getting people who are trained to do those things. That's one of the reasons why Kishwaukee College is so valuable. The fact that they do have all these training programs in place, where there's truck driving, mechanical, air conditioning, anything like that. For a young person coming out of high school, if they don't want to go to college, that might be an option for them to look into.
Yeah, you're not paying off the student loans your entire 20s and 30s, right? Which
That's
is nice
right.
thing. Yeah, I think it's DeKalb Mechanical's doing a deal where they had 20 or 30 kids this summer learning about how to do mechanical stuff. How practical is that?
Yeah, it is. And, programs like that, they'll find out some of those young people get interested in doing it for their career. Some of it is dirty work, but some of it pays very well. Mm-hmm. Probably more than a lot of people make in their regular jobs that are clean.
Dan, how old's your oldest?
14.
14. So is he already leaning about a profession, or you talked to him about that?
Yeah, he wants to join either the Army or the Navy.
Okay.
But back to these jobs that Bill was talking about, I know a guy who he's got a junk removal business, and he starts his employees at 21 or 22 an hour. He told me he's having trouble finding people. I said, what's the deal? And he said, well, I've had a couple of guys show up to work drunk. So a message to everybody, TD, especially you.
He's pointing at me. Don't show up drunk to the
When you
interview.
get a job,
I'll write that one down.
Be sober.
All right, that's good to know. And this one relates, taking a look at sports now. The DeKalb Bar Boosters dissolves, the article in the paper, remaining funds to be distributed among DeKalb High School athletic teams there. And of course, the Bar Boosters have been around. Well, Laura Powell, the DeKalb resident, mostly serves as the board president, said the primary reason was due to vacancies on the board and no one stepping in to fill them. Just we're talking about with the jobs. Nobody wants to be on the Bar Booster board.
Yeah, it takes time. You have to, it seems like everybody's busy.
Right.
Whether you have kids or not, we're all busy making a living. I don't know, maybe you're working on a project. But I give these people credit, these officials and office holders who volunteer their time to serve on a board.
Yeah, and they did it a long time there. They said, according to Ms. Powell, the last couple of meetings, we have 1 to 2 attendees per meeting, outside board members. So you can't get it done that way, can you, Bill?
No, you can't. And, typically those booster clubs have been filled by individuals who had students active in the sports. I know somebody who was on the board who, came off the board last year because his daughter was a senior and she's going to go off to college. So he figures he served his term and it's time for somebody else to step up, but we're not getting people to step up. It's the same kind of thing with service clubs like Kiwanis and Rotary and everything else.
Right.
You have trouble recruiting members because, as Dan says, everybody is busy and has their own little niche thing they're doing.
The Powell said the community support of the Cal Bar Boosters over the years has been appreciated. She's working with the athletic director, Peter Goff, at the Cal High School to try to find a way for fiscal questions. Remaining funds are distributed to Cal High School athletic teams, and lifetime membership passes will be honored at athletic events, according to the boosters. But the big question I have, Bill, and Dan, maybe you have some insight on this, the FNBO Challenge, of course, every year the Calvin Sycamore play in football, and they play in basketball over at the NIU stadium there, and of course in the Convocation Center. And now that's at risk now, I guess.
Well, I think from what I understand, FMBO will probably still sponsor it, but how are those funds now going to be split? What's going to happen? Will the athletic department at DeKalb have to take ownership more so of that than they have?
Okay. And Dan, something we learned from you, your kids are homeschooling, but they'll have a chance to play sports at DeKalb High School, will they not?
Yeah, I mean, two of my boys wrestled at Huntley Middle School.
Okay.
For DeKalb.
All right.
And they're also in running club, which is a free club. You'll see kids early in the morning in June. It just ended. Like cross-country runners.
Right, yeah. We just talked to the Sycamore track team, the state champion Sycamore track team, and he pointed out to me that several coaches on that team are volunteers. They just in it to help the kids, which is just great to see that. Yeah. And I'll commend you, Dan, because I do it almost every podcast, but Dan every Saturday gets a little weekly baseball game going with his kids and the neighborhood kids, and I think that's great. I wish I would have had that in my neighborhood, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, I started in the dog days, so late July I'm starting it.
Okay.
6 or 8 weeks. Half hour of practice, then a 1 hour game.
I love it.
There you go.
Got a bunch of regulations and paperwork to be filled out.
And I assume you do some odd things to pick teams.
I line them up, tallest to shortest, after watching them practice, and then I pick.
Oh, you do? Okay.
And then I pitch.
All right.
Yeah, pitch count is high on this arm.
But no walks. Never to walk. As a kid, I could do anything different. I would have swung away as a little leaguer instead of standing up there waiting for a walk. I feel embarrassed now even saying it.
Yeah, and it's very non-committal.
Yeah. If
you show up, great. Like I needed another player, and there was a girl, and she played.
Okay.
I mean, I said, can you play ball? Do you want to play? And she said, yes.
That's great. That's great. And speaking of girls playing ball, we call that a segue into business. The Sycamore Psychos won the Storm Days title for the second year in a row. And what really makes this impressive is that this is the team, their 15 and under team, won in the 16 and under bracket. Bill, and of course, the Sycamore softball team quite well.
Well, yeah, and it is. They're playing up in age bracket. Travel softball is huge around here. I mean, there's probably 120 travel teams within 20 miles of DeKalb.
Really?
I mean, you go over to Batavia, Geneva, there's dozens and dozens over that way. The softball program I'm involved with, we have some of our own travel feeder programs, but a lot of our kids play in other teams.
Okay.
So it's very big. It's big business. One of our juniors going to become a senior is actually on her trip with her travel team is out in Denver this week.
Is that right?
Yeah.
See, my grandson is a soccer player, and he plays soccer all year long, and my stepson takes him everywhere, and I'm just like, are we really playing this much soccer? But he's in a position to afford it. But then you get down to the money we're talking about. You were talking about paying for the karate and things. I mean, this is not cheap, and especially if you're going to take your kid out of state to do something,
Well, I guess if the parents, if they have executive incomes, I mean, maybe they could do that. I don't have that, but that came up in professional sports with Halliburton tearing his Achilles.
Uh-huh.
People said, "Oh, well, these basketball players play year-round now. There's no off-season." Have you heard? Did you?
I have not heard that. No.
Okay.
I know with the Olympics.
Yeah, there is. You think about it. Once the NBA's done, they have the 3-on-3 league, and they have this and that, and people play all year round. I mean, we see that with high school athletes all the time. It used to be you would play football in the fall, basketball in the winter, and then you'd play baseball in the spring or run track. Well, now you don't see that cross. The coaches are almost demanding that you devote 12 months to your sport, to their sport. I mean, we have a mix over at the high school I'm at with some kids play sports the same sport all year round, but we also encourage them to play some of their other high school teams.
Yeah.
like we have basketball and volleyball players. So
Well, we just had Aiden Weiser on. Aiden Weiser and Dylan Hodges, both stars on the Sycamore football team. Aiden played on the basketball team as well. And of course, they're state champions on the track team as well. And it's great to see an athlete playing 2 or 3 sports instead of just focusing on the one.
Oh, it is. It's tremendous. And actually, you will hear college coaches talk about they like to see the kids play other sports because it keeps them well-rounded, keeps their muscles trained in different ways. While a young lady who plays basketball and volleyball, there's a lot of jumping, but then you go and do softball, and it's a lot of different things, yet they come in better condition.
Mm-hmm. Well, Davon Grant's a great example over at DeKalb High School. He's going to go start at the University of Illinois. He is a great basketball player and he's a great football player. And I was so glad that Davon's going to play both. I think he's going to graduate early, actually, but he's going to choose football. But he could have gone either way with that. But he played both sports. I thought that was great.
Yeah, and it is unfortunate now that at the D1 level, you'll never see a 2-sport athlete anymore. They're very rare. But, you see some people at D3 level playing multiple sports.
It's a great thing to see. It really is. So I wanted to mention that on community calendar, I want to mention the senior health fair. Dan, you might want to wear, you're not quite aware. Bill and I are aware of this. But the senior health fair is going to be coming up on Monday, July 14th at the DeKalb High School from 10 a.m. to 12 noon at the cafeteria. 501 West Dresser Road. And I see all the senators and representatives are behind this, but great to know that. As we get older, it's scary with the how much money getting old and sick costs.
It can be, yes. But that is good because they do have a lot of different, agencies that you and I know very well. Safe Passage, Visiting Angels, et cetera, that are out there and doing
Elder Care Services.
Elder Care, yeah, that are all out there, putting together a place for seniors to come get more information. And it's very practical, and I'm glad to see that is continuing. It's been on for a number of years, first with Dave Wurzing and then with Jeff.
Oh, Dave Wurzing. Yeah.
And Syverson from Rockford. So I'm glad to see it's continuing.
Dan, you got some senior family members in the area? Are they everybody okay?
Yeah, but I mean, are there blood draws there? And
the whole 9, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's the thing about life. You don't know what's going on inside your body, and it's important.
Well, I was of the old adage, what you don't know won't hurt you, but I find that not true when it comes to your health. It's better to find out, right? As opposed to just say it'll go away or rub some dirt on it, you'll be fine. And I want to mention the Turning Back Time Car Show. Of course, the My Insurance Guy is one of the sponsors of this program, and Mike DeVito. I don't know if you know Mike DeVito at all, Bill, but super guy.
Because we know him through Freezing for Food when they come out there. In fact, I saw him recently going into Pizza Villa of all places. So.
All right. And of course, Mike Tritle is Dan's neighbor. Mike used to be very much involved with the Turning Back Time Car Show. And I know you don't stop and talk to Mike Tritle on the street unless you got about an hour to kill.
He's a great neighbor.
I mean that in the nicest way. Are you got another news story, Dan?
About roundabouts.
Oh, yeah.
We hear they're safe, TD.
That's right.
An Aurora man flipped his car at the roundabout.
Oh, no.
Peace and Gurler. This was back on the 20th of June. DeKalb County Sheriff's Office reports 30-year-old Carlos Perez was heading south on Peace when he struck the median, flipping the vehicle. Now, he told police he was heading west on Peace Road.
Oh, dear.
He was not hurt. He was charged with improper lane usage and DUI alcohol. But there are accidents at roundabout.
All right, yeah, because we had Mr. Carlson here, one of the aldermen here in DeKalb, and he used to, that Justin did that for a living, or it still does, and worked with intersections and lighting and roundabouts, and he said the roundabouts are very safe. He brought up the fact that you don't have to worry about the lights going out, right? Because there are no lights.
There are no lights. There's several other roundabouts here in DeKalb. Out near the Convocation Center, there's a couple. And, there's still talk of the one going to be on First Street at Pine. And so we'll see how that all plays out.
Yeah, we should talk about that. But what are your thoughts as a former alderman? What do you think about that roundabout in that area?
I've never been a fan of roundabouts, but as I get using them more when I run into them in other places, I can understand the reasoning why. It's just that, like any other intersection, there are people who don't give way when they should.
Right. All right, we'll see how that one plays out, too. And, of course, we used to do the obituaries. We always like to include the obituaries here. Dale Leroy Johnson, who we just lost. Dale was a wonderful man. I wanted to talk about his... I got a master's degree in guiding counseling at Northern Illinois University. Dan owned the Inland Woodcraft Company in Kirkland. Are you familiar with that at all? Yeah. And Sycamore for 30 years with his wife, Margaret. Dale has many hobbies. He was a Freemason and a member of the Moose and the Elk Lodge of Sycamore. He was a pilot as well, enjoyed flying. Dale was very kind to everybody, and everybody liked him as well. So I was telling Dan last week that as I get older, the obits, reading the obits, it's a strange thing. I just started doing it, but when you read about people's lives encapsulated in a couple of paragraphs, it's pretty amazing what some people have done. And you don't know that they did this stuff.
Right, that's it. I am in the habit of reading the obits. I caught that habit from my grandmother. And she referred to them as the Irish sports pages. And it is so as you grow older and you see people pass that you knew or people pass that are related to somebody you knew or know. And it's just like, oh, no, I didn't know they were related to them. And it's just, yeah.
And we find it out with our relatives a lot of times too. Somebody passes away, and your grandfather was in the war. My uncle was a Marine. I didn't know he was a Marine in World War II. Didn't find that out until after he had passed away. And then we also want to mention another lady you might know, Sharon Fessler. Sharon Fessler, we just lost her. Sharon graduated a degree in chemistry in 1965 from NIU. She met her future husband Wayne while attending Duke. Coincidentally, they were both raised in Western Illinois, 40 miles from each other. She began work at the National Bank and Trust in Sycamore in 1978, took the position of trust department. She eventually became the department's first female trust officer, assisted retiring clients and their financial concerns. So even back in 1978, she knew that old people were worried about retiring and what they're going to do with their money.
Right. It should be a concern. I've encouraged my 3 kids to start a retirement account very early. Fortunately, they all did, and it continues to grow. So when they get to their retirement age, they should be better prepared than I was.
I like that. And Dan, you instill the value of money to your kids? How do you do it?
I do. Compounding interest. I mean, maybe someone told me about that when I was young, but I wasn't listening. But that is an interesting thing to look at, to grow, how money grows exponentially.
Yeah.
It's like a hockey stick.
Always that question, you say, you want $100,000 right now, which like a penny every day for a year, and then you try to figure it out, and then you want the penny. It's like, oh my God, that turns out to be more money there.
Yeah, but like Bill said, very important to start early. Even if you're 19, start investing when you're 19. Now, when you're 19 or 20 or 21, you're not thinking about being 65.
No, but you have that time to let it grow in that case. When I was in high school, Notre Dame School for Boys, which I was asked to leave my junior year, they had us follow, we'd pick a stock in the beginning of the year, we'd follow that stock all year long. And it was great because we learned all about the stock market, we looked at other stocks, maybe we should have done that. But it's great to teach kids at that age the value of money.
Oh, it is, and if you start early, even if those first 10 years, if you're only putting $10 a week into it, that's going to grow, as he said, exponentially over the years.
Yeah, compound that interest, that's great. So wanted to mention that, and also she was a chair of both the Family Service Agency, and this, of course, is that we're talking about Sharon Fessler. She was the chair of both the Family Service Agency and the DeKalb County Nursing Home Foundation, president of Safe Passage Board, a member of the Sippequay Girl Scout Council, and a member of the Safe Passage as well. And plus more, she was an elder in her church in Presbyterian, deacon and treasurer as well. Her greatest joy was working with the little ones in the children's workshop. So, what a great lady.
Yeah. I did not know her, but I did know her husband, Wayne.
And they will be missed. All right. So we wanted to mention that. And of course, birthdays on the flip side. I'm thrilled. A lot of people sent us in the birthdays. We answered. Dan's going to get the news quiz question ready if you could, Dan, and we'll finish things up with that. But some birthdays I want to mention. Teresa Seabies, so I'm saying that right. Bill Finney is having his birthday on the 8th. And Liz, his wife, had his birthday on July 3rd. Evie Remick is 9 years old on July 8th. And I'm assuming Mom Melissa, his birthday is on July 31st. Garrett Hayden's birthday is on the 14th, and Greg Portano, who I happen to know for a neighbor of mine, is going to have a birthday on the 20th, along with Sailor Wicker. And I was going to say, if we still did the coolest name on the birthday list, Sailor would be cool.
Sailor is a cool name.
Isn't that a cool name?
Yeah.
I love that.
And if I could add to the birthday list,
please, yes.
My son Sean, whose birthday was July 2nd.
Oh, Sean, all right, very good. Sean Finucane, I won't even try to spell Finucane. And then also want to mention Haley Emmett, his birthday's on the 21st, and Jackson with an X. Jackson McFetters will have a birthday on July 21st as well. Doc Severinsen will be 91. Now, do you know who that is? Did you watch the Johnny Carson show?
Was he the band
He
leader?
was the band director with that
Okay.
very loud dresser. You know, I didn't know he was still around. I did not know that he was still alive. Ringo Starr is 84. Who was your favorite Beatle?
George.
George. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Ringo was always mine. I said Ringo was under
George.
George too. Well, that's interesting.
And Ringo was the oldest.
Yeah.
Yes.
He's 84 years old. And Tom Hanks. Who doesn't love Tom Hanks? 68 years old.
Best
That's it.
movie, The Burbs.
Oh, that's a great movie. That is good. All right, Dan, you got a news quiz question for you, and you probably want to know what we're giving away, don't you?
Yes, what are you giving away, TD? Check that. TJ.
That's right, TJ. Well, we got a gift certificate to Pizza Villa, pizza, pasta, sandwiches, and more. And of course, don't forget the kids eat free on Thursday when you go to Pizza Villa. And you can respond to the news quiz at tdryan2001 at yahoo.com. And the question is...
The DeKalb City leaders voted to ban these vending machines. What type did they vote to ban?
All right, if you know the type of the vending machine, again, contact me at tdryan2001 at yahoo.com. We're working on building up that prize closet to make it a little bigger there, but things to come. Real quickly, tell us about Biking with Beansy. That's coming up.
Yep, Biking with Beansy is Sunday, July 13th, out of the DeKalb Rec Center out on South 4th Street. It's not a race, it's a recreational ride. You can sign up through active.com, Biking with Beansy, or if you want more information, go to kishwaukeekiwanis.com.
Now, where people are hearing this after July 4th, so too late for the early registration.
Actually, the early registration goes through this Sunday, the 6th.
Okay.
And if you can also look up Biking with Beansy on Facebook.
And you can bike the day of the event, right?
You can walk in and do it that day. Yeah, the rate prior to the early release is 35, and then the day of is 48.
And how we set for bikes in the Lynch household? Everybody got a bike?
We have bikes, and I have to pump them all up. So that's...
It always falls on you, Dan.
Dan, I would think, with all your experience and all your baseball playing, you ought to be able to hit out a metric century ride that day. That's only 62 and a half miles.
Oh, mercy.
I'll get back to you on that.
I love my Japanese-made bicycle from the 1980s.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I have a 10-speed.
All right.
Yeah, I enjoy it.
Yeah,
At least they didn't threaten you with a 100-mile ride.
when we used to watch Bozo, of course, the big grand prize was that 10-speed Schwinn bicycle, baby. That was the
Made in
bike.
Chicago.
Made in Chicago, that's right. Well, Bill Finucane, thank you so much for your time and for everything you've done for the community and continue to do. We appreciate that. You and I will be freezing for food again.
We will.
People-
We have our date already set for both that and Let's Talk Turkey. So just a quick plug, November 21 will be Let's Talk Turkey. That'll be right at the Salvation Army building there on 9th
and Grove, right?
And then, December 4, 5, 6, we'll be freezing for food. Location TBA right now.
All right, yes, we will follow up on that too. Dan Lynch, always a pleasure, my friend. Thanks so much for helping us out as you always do. We appreciate that.
Yeah, and those get me in the Christmas spirit, those events.
Well, that's good. I'm glad to hear that. And it really helps us, Salvation Army, both with the Thanksgiving meal baskets that they're able to put together with all the turkeys, and then the event 2 weeks later that really helps supply them for next several months. In fact, we are still using some of the pasta we collected for that event.
Is that right?
Yes.
Wow, that's awesome. All right, well, that'll do it for News Podcast number 5. Big thanks to Ethan Davis back there pushing all the buttons and making things happen. And that'll do it for News Podcast number 5, TD Ryan Unleashed. TD Ryan Unleashed is brought to you by Scott Diamond, your State Farm Insurance Agent, Pizza Villa in DeKalb, Elder Care Services of DeKalb County, The Junction Eating Place in DeKalb, and my insurance guy, Mike DeVito in Sycamore.